Well, fancy meeting you here, YouTube friend. Welcome to our third Story Planner workshop.
This is it, the big finale of the Season 1 trilogy. It needs to have a suitably grand title. Boom, boom, boom. Ta-da! There, that's better. In the first workshop, Roger was both the creator and the facilitator.
Then, in the second workshop, I was the creator while Vaughan was the facilitator.
Now, in the third workshop, we alternated between these roles across the different exercises.
And just a reminder that in the description of this video, we've linked to the story that resulted from this workshop if you want to check that out first.
Get and collect ideas. Once again, we started the workshop with only a single concept as inspiration, namely, the end.
Since there were two streams of creative energy this time, we produced many more ideas during the brainstorming than usual and tried exploring all of them.
An idea I really liked that came up during this brainstorm was thinking about the end of the world.
Gee, that's not dark.
More specifically, what would you do if there was only 1 week left before the end of the world? So, not enough to be completely reckless, but still only 7 days to do everything you wanted in your life. But that's a story for another day.
At this stage, even if the ideas don't all fit together, you want to get as many of them down as possible. They're all working to your goal quietly in the background of your brain. That said, the more ideas you have, the more challenging it is later on to whittle them down to one big idea for your story.
Sort and group ideas.
There wasn't a clear leading idea from our brainstorm, but this exercise helps you to get closer to that. We discussed how the end is like a light switch. It goes off at the end of the story and that's it.
Or is it? Because we realized that the end is also a cause and effect that leads to new things that are each more nuanced than a simple on or off.
And what appealed to me here was the cost that had to be paid to get to the end, and how we can make a story that explores that price.
We then took various ideas from the previous exercise that were relevant in answering the question buckets in this exercise. Questions about what appeals to you as the creator and what you feel will be interesting to the story's audience. Define and rank ideas.
We took that idea of what is the cost of the end and broke it up into two branches that explored the worth of getting to the end. All the resources that a story's main character must use to get what they want are equally important, but the one that wins out in any story is the one that the main character can't help but spend.
Even a simple concept like the end can take you to deep places. Creating stories requires you to be vulnerable so that you can connect to them in a way that's meaningful to you.
Our idea was shaping up more and more, so we then proceeded to rank the various aspects from our not so important to most important. And what surfaced by the end of this exercise was the question, is the cost worth it?
Name and own the idea. With all the heavy philosophizing, we didn't have a definitive theme yet, but we gave it a name that captured the essence as best as possible by this point, namely, finish line.
Well, crossing the finish line is the end of a race. The actual cost of crossing that line is all the training before the race, and then the effort during the actual race.
Bonus exercise. Because the story was going to focus on the end, Roger thought about how that concept is used in storytelling. So we looked at the finale part of the famous beat sheet model by Blake Snyder. We're both fans of that structure and wanted to see if there were any story beats for an ending that we were possibly missing.
What this sidestep exercise did help us do was to better understand our theme, and we were able to redefine it a bit further to a meditation on the cost of the end. I learned a lot through this about what the end means philosophically. I'd never given it much thought, but I think all my future stories will be improved because of the insights gained from discussing this theme.
Meanwhile, our brainstorming in Exercise 1 about the end had led to talking about Armageddon, And you know what that makes one think of? No, not quite. Armageddon makes you think about
Dinosaurs!
And our discussion about dinosaurs reminded Roger about
Birds.
So, just a normal, everyday Roger Vaughan conversation there then.
I remembered how birds are related to dinosaurs, and they survived that extinction level event, a story I heard about in the Audible original, A Grown-Up Guide to Dinosaurs, which is amazing and you should check it out.
With this discovery, Roger was all birds this, birds that, birds, 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 birds. Once again, a series of questions in this exercise helps you understand your idea really well, asking you not only the good things about it, but also what frustrates and worries you. You want to make yourself aware of the potential pitfalls you may encounter going forward with this big idea. Convert idea into statement.
With the lens of what birds went through to get here, we ensured our statement conveyed as much detail as we needed it to. It became a meditation on the cost of the journey to appreciate the value of going forward to the end that is in sight. It's a bit wordy.
It was super wordy.
And while it may not make a whole lot of sense to anyone else, for us it was what we needed. Each one of those words were triggers for us that inspired ideas.
Define the role players.
Even though I had the story of the evolution of birds in my heart, I tried to keep the door open for other ideas.
This is like the rope workshop all over again, isn't it? Are you now a man in love with birds? At least we can tick off the what do you really care about part of the workshop's goals.
So when talking about the role players in a doomsday scenario, we looked at the possible groups rather than the specific roles that influence birds. When developing characters later in the workshop, we'd return to this exercise to refine it in light of the bird story.
Define statement contrasts. It became clear that our very wordy theme statement had two distinct parts to it, namely the cost of the journey so far versus the benefits of going forward.
And those mapped nicely to a reflection on the past and the value of the future. And the war between these two sides became the central plot of the eventual story.
Define statement theme.
This was such a complex theme to tackle because the more we learnt about it, the more options we had.
It was like a multi-headed hydra of themes. Roger never does like to choose the easy option with stories.
If we started writing the story at this point and not finished the other exercises, we would have had a very muddled story. This is so beneficial to make sure your theme is as clear as possible before doing too much writing. And that's what this exercise gets you to do. Commit to your theme.
After lots of conversation around the opposing forces at play within the theme, as called out on the triangle graphic, we arrived at the wonderful sentence, "Doing something with purpose is better than doing nothing."
Why that resonated with me is because doing something with purpose is choosing to live life rather than merely existing, and that is a theme worth exploring.
Understand motivation. Okay, cool. So now, armed with our ultimate defined statement, we use the motivation flowchart to explore the theme's main components. This exercise comprises a series of interconnected questions that get you thinking about the main way your story will handle the theme. You want to have that strong sense of theme as you go into the next exercise, where you'll flesh out the story's characters.
Everything in a story should somehow be connected to the theme so that it has significance.
Create theme actors.
This was actually the first time we used this tool for a story this season. It has always been there, but it's more useful in a larger story. The other two stories were quite singular in their character focus and didn't have the relationship with the larger world like this story would have.
So we went back to the actors in exercise 6 and got more clarity about what kind of actors we would expect to find within this more bird-orientated story.
Then we took each of those actors and plugged them into this exercise. By answering the question at the top of the column, you can build up characters that are well-rounded and tied to the story's theme. Questions such as, What's the best outcome for them? What's the worst? What causes them pain? What are their obstacles? All those questions lead to the final big question. What does each actor truly need?
And then you rinse and repeat those 11 questions for all the actors you've identified. While it might seem like a lot of work, this gives you a marvelous blueprint for creating the eventual characters for your story. Choose Major POV. Once again, this was the first time we could effectively use this exercise. In previous workshops, we just didn't have enough actors to add to the matrix.
One of the great things about working through the story planner is that completing one exercise sets you up for the next one. So we took each actor and mapped them according to how much influence they have within the story and then how much interest they have in the core theme.
The actors that you identify as having a high influence and interest are then a good choice for the main characters of your story.
In doing this exercise, I was surprised to find that 2 of the actors were as important as the protagonist. And sure enough, in the eventual story, the characters representing these actors would play a major role.
Wrapping up.
Just like the theme, this story was a challenge to do, but by taking one step at a time, we landed on something that really resonated with us. Working through the story planner really set me up for success for writing this one. I was even able to quickly create 3 drafts of the story, all still keeping the main core theme and motivation, but changing the style and structure quite a bit each time to see which one worked best.
This drafting process was made easier because Roger could refer to the workshop each time as his starting point, rather than having to start from scratch with each draft.
Because we had had so much discussion around the ideas and left so many valuable ones on the board, I had plenty of room to maneuver without hitting writer's block or not knowing which idea I needed to proceed with.
So that's our 3rd and last workshop for this season. As a fellow story creator, you likely see many of the same challenges that we went through in trying to plan the story, while also trying to ensure that it covered everything that's important for making a good story.
We believe that you have a story inside of you trying to get out. Trust in these steps, work through them as best you can, but most importantly, trust in yourself. Lastly, we come to that unavoidable part of any video where we ask you to like the video if you liked it, comment if you have any questions, and subscribe to be notified automatically when there are new workshops and stories. Well, if you hit the notification button, that is. And please donate if you want to support us even more. See you in the next video, friends. Bye.
Bye.
Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs.